Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Poe, and today I'm doing week 30 of my 2020 reads. This week I read one great buddy read and I DNF'd another book. The book that I finished buddy reading this week was Bluebird by Attica Locke, which I buddy read with Wendy at BookNerdTV, who I will link below. If you haven't checked out Wendy's channel, you should. She is so much fun, and I absolutely love buddy reading with her because she's so good at analysis and discussion and just kind of breaking down what's going on in a story. So this book is something that is a murder mystery, but has really a noir feel to it because we've got a detective, a ranger, a Texas ranger, who is really a very flawed character. He's actually in a bit of disgrace, kind of on suspension, but a friend of his asks him to go kind of unofficially check out what has happened in a small town in Texas where there have been some murders that his friend thinks may be hate crimes, even though the local sheriff is not investigating them as such. So he digs into that. And this story was so good of a read. I wasn't expecting it. I'd heard good things about Attica Locke before, but I didn't realize that it was going to go into so many social issues. So in addition to just being an interesting murder mystery detective novel, it covered so much to do with racism in Texas. The main character, Darren, is a black man, and as a Texas Ranger, he feels like he is constantly caught between his desire to do justice and protect people and see that everybody is protected equally under the law, and sort of the way that racism is so inherent in society and in the law enforcement in Texas. And so it's just so much about that, as well as so much about his and other characters' kind of internal struggles. He's dealing with alcoholism and just constantly a lot of ethical, moral gray areas. And so it was just a really interesting story, and I was a little blown away by the depth that this story examined issues of racism in Texas. I mean, it talked about all kinds of things, everything from hate crimes against black people not being really investigated, to black people being blamed for things that they didn't do, to issues related to the history of things like the Great Migration. I mean, there's so much in here, and it was just really fascinating. So I had tons of fun with this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Then the book that I DNF'd this week was Escaping Exodus by Nicky Drayden. And this book was so cool, so I was really sad to DNF it, but the problem that I thought I might have with this book of it being kind of too graphic in terms of body horror was very much true. And I ended up DNFing this right at the beginning, just at 4%, so I was only 13 pages in, but it was way too graphic for me. So this is a sci-fi story that is so cool in its premise. It is about kind of this universe where humanity has changed a lot, and they are spacefaring, but they don't use kind of mechanical spaceships. Instead, they use these giant animals that go through space, but they kind of inhabit that animal's body and kind of use it up and kill it. And the premise is really interesting because it looks at the daughter of one of the leaders and how she kind of comes to realize that maybe this is problematic. But in the first 13 pages, the amount of discussing of bodily fluids, so many bodily fluids, I didn't even know there were this many. The kind of descriptions of cutting things open and kind of bones and all sorts of things. I mean, it was really, really descriptive. So it was way too much for me in terms of graphicness, but I was very sad to give it up because in just those few pages, the world building was fantastic. I loved the voice of the author, the writing style. I loved already where I could see some of the areas that the main character would need to grow. I mean, it was a really, really promising start, just too much for me. So I think that if you're not squeamish like me, this could be a really good story to pick up. But if you are squeamish like me, then maybe skip this one because it was a lot. Okay, so that wraps up my reading for this week. If you have read either of these books or you have anything that you'd like to chat with me about, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you.